My son chose his stepfather, so I stopped saving him. After divorce, I kept rescuing my son financially while his stepfather took credit. When my son publicly rejected me, I finally stepped back, forcing him to confront the truth. When my son told me he'd rather have his stepfather in his life than me, something inside me quietly broke, the part that had always believed love was enough. I remember the exact moment. I was standing in the kitchen, the smell of burnt toast still clinging to the air, the kettle whistling softly in the background, and I heard him laugh at something his stepfather had said. My son, my own boy, turned to me with that forced smile and said, almost like he'd rehearsed it, "Thanks for everything, Dad, but I think I'm good now." And that was it. No, I love you, no hesitation, just good now. I should have walked away that day, but I didn't. I had been his safety net for years. Long after the divorce, I paid his tuition, covered his rent when jobs fell through, lent him my car for road trips he'd never asked me to join. And through it all, I thought my efforts were invisible only in the sense that a parent doesn't look for applause until the truth hits you hard. He was watching someone else take credit. Life before this had been ordinary in its own gentle way. My mornings began with the same ritual, sunlight spilling across the kitchen table, the aroma of strong coffee mixing with the faintly burnt edges of toast, my cat brushing against my leg as if to remind me I wasn't alone. My ex-wife had left years ago, taking half the house and the happier half of my memories, but leaving me with him, my son, Alex, and a lifetime of quiet Sunday dinners and baseball games in the backyard. I'd never known my life without him. After the divorce, things were fragile at first. I watched Alex grow, balancing school, soccer, and later college. Every parent-teacher conference, every hospital visit for a scraped knee, I was there. Every phone call in the middle of the night, every "Dad, I need help with rent" text, I answered. Not because I had to, but because I loved him. And then Mark appeared, his stepfather. I won't lie, Mark was charming. He had this easy smile, the kind that made everyone in the room feel like they were the only person in the world. Alex liked him. He liked him a lot. And slowly, over the months, I noticed the shift. Small at first, a laugh that sounded just a little too intimate when Mark said something, a shrug that wasn't meant for me anymore. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was imagining the way Mark took credit for things I had done. The car I co-signed for Alex's first job, the tuition I covered while Mark helped him figure out a budget. But the feeling didn't go away. A gnawing sense in my chest that I was no longer essential. I remember the night it became undeniable. Alex had invited Mark over for dinner. I set the table carefully, white plates, folded napkins, the candles lit just so. I cooked his favorite, roast chicken with rosemary, mashed potatoes, and the little caramelized carrots he always pretended not to like but secretly loved. Mark arrived first. He carried wine, laughed at jokes I hadn't even made, and somehow, effortlessly, slid into the role I had spent years shaping. Alex hung on every word. When I tried to talk about college or future plans, Mark nodded, finished my sentences, and Alex's gaze followed him, not me. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I just sat there, knife and fork in hand, feeling invisible. And later, when Alex said that line, "Thanks for everything, Dad, but I think I'm good now," it didn't sting as much as it froze me. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my wine glass. I couldn't even feel angry, only this quiet, hollow ache. It's strange how betrayal sometimes arrives wrapped in mundane gestures. A borrowed car, a shared joke, a smile at the wrong moment. And yet, even in that ache, a part of me clung to hope. Hope that he'd remember me, that the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms would somehow see through the charm, see through Mark, and remember who had always been there.
But deep down, a seed of realization was taking root. Maybe love wasn't enough. Maybe being there for someone, financially, emotionally, endlessly, wasn't going to guarantee they'd choose you when it counted. I didn't know then that the choice Alex made that night, to side with Mark, to publicly reject me, would force me into a decision of my own, a decision I had avoided for too long, one that would change our lives forever. The question that haunted me as I washed the dishes in silence was simple, yet terrifying. How do you stop saving someone who refuses to be saved?
After that night, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Little inconsistencies in Alex's stories, excuses that didn't sit right. It began with money. I'd transfer rent to his account, and Mark would suddenly offer to cover it, boasting about how he saved the day. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just generosity. But the way Alex beamed at him, the way he said, "Thanks, Mark, you're the best," left a bitter taste. Then came the invitations. Family dinners, birthdays, holidays. Mark suddenly became the center. Alex would text me almost apologetically, "Hey Dad, Mark's taking me to dinner tonight. Hope that's okay." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And every time, my chest tightened like the air had been squeezed out of me. I tried to tell myself it was normal. He was growing up. He had a new father figure in his life. But the truth was harder to swallow. I had spent years building a bond with him, teaching him the little things, how to grill a steak, how to change a tire, how to manage a budget. And now Mark was rewriting the script. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a joke there. "Oh, you'd never understand this, Dad," Alex said once, laughing at something Mark had explained. My stomach sank. I wanted to speak up, to remind him of everything I'd done, but I stayed quiet. I had learned long ago that confrontation often widened the distance instead of bridging it. One afternoon, the suspicion became a quiet obsession. I was fixing a leaky faucet when I noticed a stack of receipts sticking from under Alex's desk. They weren't small bills. They were tuition payments, car insurance, rent deposits, things I had always handled. And each one had Mark's name scribbled in the memo. Paid by Mark. I sat there for a long time, staring at the receipts, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator. The thought that had been whispering in the back of my mind now screamed. My son was letting Mark take credit from my support, and worse, he didn't even notice. I confronted him that evening. The words came out in a strangled voice, softer than I intended. "Alex, why are you letting Mark handle all of this? I've been paying your tuition, your rent, all of it. Why do you act like he's doing it?" He looked at me, confused, maybe even irritated. "Dad, he's helping me. He's been there. You've been busy with work. I mean, I appreciate everything, but come on, it's not a big deal." Not a big deal. The words echoed in my chest. Not a big deal. Years of support, guidance, late-night calls, hospital visits, all invisible to the one person I had given everything to. That night, I lay awake, listening to the faint creak of the floorboards outside Alex's room. I could hear him laughing softly with Mark on the phone. Their laughter felt like glass shattering inside me, fragments of the bond I had cherished now scattered across the floor. The next week, the pattern became undeniable. Social media posts, photos of Mark and Alex fixing a car, studying, even shopping together, with captions like, "Thanks for always having my back." I knew, even before reading the comments, that the credit was being assigned to someone else. I tried to reach him one night after a particularly quiet dinner. I touched his shoulder lightly, almost instinctively, and said, "Alex, do you even see me anymore?" He looked down at his plate, the fork trembling in his hand, and whispered, "I do, Dad. I'm okay now. You don't have to worry about me." That phrase became a haunting refrain in my mind. You don't have to worry about me. I had worried for him every day of his life. I had sacrificed nights of sleep, weekends, savings, and more, all in the hope that he'd feel safe, supported, loved. And now he was telling me it was unnecessary?
It was in that moment, lying awake on the creaking mattress of my own empty room, that I realized the quiet truth. Love alone cannot force someone to recognize it. Sometimes love has to take a step back, even if it means watching someone stumble. And yet, the thought of stepping back terrified me. What if Alex fell? What if he made mistakes that could have been prevented if I had continued intervening? My hands itched to reach out, to send another payment, to call another favor, to be the hero once again. But deep down, a spark of resolve grew. Maybe the lesson he needed, not from me, not from Mark, was that actions have consequences, that support must be reciprocated with respect, not blind dependence. The question lingered in the quiet of the night. Could I let him face reality on his own, even if it broke both of our hearts a little in the process?
It all came to a head one rainy Saturday afternoon. I had driven over to Alex's apartment, intent on checking in. Not just a text, not a casual call, and I could feel a tightening in my chest, a premonition of the conversation I didn't want, but somehow knew was coming. The door swung open before I could even knock. Mark stood there first, grinning, holding a bag of takeout. "Hey, Dad," he said smoothly. "Just in time. We were about to dig in." Alex appeared behind him, hair damp from the rain, cheeks flushed. "Dad," he said, a little too cheerfully, "you're here. Perfect timing." I stepped inside, trying to ignore the smell of Thai food mixed with the faintly sweet scent of Mark's cologne. My voice trembled slightly, but I forced it to remain calm. "Alex, I think we need to talk." Mark's grin faltered just slightly, but he recovered instantly. "Sure, we're all family here. What's up?" I followed Alex to the living room, noticing the photos on the wall. Mark and Alex at a baseball game. Mark and Alex at a graduation. Mark and Alex cooking in the kitchen. Not a single photo of me. Not one. I dropped into the armchair across from him. "I've been supporting you for years," I said quietly, trying to keep the edge of anger from my voice. "School, rent, your car, every time you needed me, I was there. And yet, I watch you give him the credit for everything. Do you even see what you're doing?" Alex's face fell, but not with shame, with frustration. "Dad, I do see it. He's been helping me in ways you can't. He's present, okay? I appreciate you, but Mark's here every day. His voice faltered, searching for words. "He's my dad now, in ways I need him to be." I felt my chest tighten so much I could barely breathe. "Your dad is the one who stayed up all night with you when you had the flu, the one who watched you flounder through calculus, the one who co-signed your first apartment, and now you're telling me I'm not enough?" "I didn't say that," Alex protested, "but you're always rescuing me. Sometimes I just want to figure things out myself, Dad. He lets me. You never do." The words hit harder than I expected. He'd never said them out loud before, never accused me of smothering him. And yet, as I sat there, I understood. All my years of support, my constant interventions, my attempts to protect him, had built a wall between us. My love, as fierce as it was, had become something he felt he needed to escape from. Mark, sensing the tension, stepped forward with that easy, rehearsed smile. "Hey, maybe we should all calm down. I can handle this. Let's just eat, huh?" And that was it. He tried to swoop in, to play the hero once again, while I sat there, invisible, my son's loyalty dangling out of reach. I looked at Alex, really looked at him, the boy I had watched grow up, the boy who once clutched my hand on the first day of school, and I realized something I had been refusing to admit. I could not save him this time. Not with words, not with money, not with presence. He had made his choice. I rose slowly, every step heavy with heartbreak. "Fine," I said softly, my voice breaking just slightly. "If that's what you need, I won't stop you." Alex's eyes widened. "Dad, wait!" But I held up a hand. "No, I've been stopping you from learning your own lessons for too long. You will have to figure things out on your own. I won't interfere anymore. Not your bills, not your decisions, not Mark's influence. It's yours now." I left that apartment in silence, rain dripping off the hood of my jacket, my hands cold against the steering wheel. The streets reflected the gray sky above, the headlights of passing cars like tiny witnesses to my failure. And yet, beneath the heartbreak, beneath the ache of rejection, there was a flicker of relief. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for every stumble, every mistake. Alex had chosen his path, and now, finally, he had the space to see where it would lead him. Whether he succeeded or failed, it would be his truth, not mine. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the faint smell of coffee still lingering, the hum of the refrigerator like a steady heartbeat. I poured myself a glass of wine and listened to the rain against the window, and I realized stepping back wasn't abandonment. It was a chance for him to grow, for me to reclaim my own life, and for both of us to confront truths we had been avoiding. The betrayal stung, yes, but I understood now that love sometimes requires letting go.
The next few weeks were quiet on my end. I didn't call, didn't send money, didn't check in. I let the silence stretch like a taut wire between us. At first, I imagined Alex would be furious or scared. Maybe he'd even come running back. But instead, life moved on around him, and he had to live it on his own. I didn't have to wait long for the consequences to show themselves. It started subtly. A missed rent payment, a late fee on his car insurance, a bounced check for tuition. At first, Mark tried to cover for him, stepping in as he always had. But the cracks were beginning to show. Alex wasn't used to managing everything himself. Not really. The world outside our little bubble didn't reward charm or borrowed credit. Then came the confrontation I had dreaded. A call from the landlord, politely stern, asking why the rent was late again. Alex, flustered and embarrassed, had no one else to blame. Not me, not Mark, just himself. I remember reading his text to me one evening. "Dad, I don't know what to do. I messed up. I thought he had it handled, but I can't do this alone." I didn't reply. I let him sit with it, let him feel the weight of the choices he had made. The next day, Mark confronted him too. I imagined it was awkward, the polished hero of every story suddenly incapable of helping the one person he had convinced himself he could save. Alex texted me again, this time with an apology that almost broke me. "I see it now. I should have noticed. I should have seen you. I'm sorry, Dad." I stayed silent for a long while, just letting him live with those words. No lecture, no judgment, just the quiet knowledge that he had finally begun to understand. The public consequences didn't take long to follow. Mutual friends, colleagues, even extended family started noticing the shift. "Alex seems different," someone mentioned in passing. Social media posts changed. Gratitude once aimed at Mark began to tilt back toward me. Slowly, recognition trickled in, the kind that only comes when the reality of effort, sacrifice, and loyalty becomes undeniable. I didn't gloat. I never wanted to. That wasn't the lesson. The lesson was in watching Alex learn it himself, watching him stumble, face the consequences, and finally understand the truth of who had always been there. One Sunday, I got a call I had been waiting for in secret. It was Alex. "Dad, can we talk?" His voice was hesitant, almost vulnerable, stripped of bravado. I agreed. We met at the little cafe he used to love as a kid, the one with the chipped mugs and the faint smell of cinnamon in the air. He walked in, head down, eyes meeting mine only fleetingly. I messed up," he said, voice shaking. "I didn't see how much you were doing for me. I let him take credit, and I ignored everything you'd been there for." I reached across the table, placing a hand lightly over his. "Alex, you're learning. That's what matters." Tears glistened in his eyes, and I could hear the tremor in his voice as he whispered, "I should have chosen you, Dad. I should have seen you." I felt the sting of the past weeks, of every ignored effort, every invisible sacrifice. But I also felt something else, a quiet pride, not for me, but for him.
for finally confronting the consequences of his choices, for finally beginning to understand the value of what had always been given freely. He didn't need me to swoop in and fix everything anymore. He just needed me to be present, fully, authentically, without trying to save him from his own lessons. The moral hit me like a soft, persistent rain. Sometimes love must step back to allow growth. Sometimes you must let someone face the consequences of their decisions, even when every instinct screams to intervene. By the time we left the cafe, the air had cleared between us, a quiet understanding settling like a warm light through the window. He walked beside me, not clinging, not distant, just present. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the bond I had feared lost begin to heal. I realized then that letting go wasn't weakness, it was strength, it was trust, and perhaps most importantly, it was love that finally let the other person stand on their own.
Months passed after that cafe meeting. Alex started managing his own life. Truly managing it, without leaning on Mark or anyone else. He still called me sometimes, but the tone had shifted. It was no longer a request for rescue. It was conversation, connection, and sometimes quiet gratitude. One evening, he came over unannounced. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, the faint smell of garlic and olive oil filling the air when I heard his voice behind me. "Hey, Dad," he said softly. I turned, and for a moment I didn't recognize the man who had once been my boy. He was taller, leaner, but his eyes, those same deep brown eyes, held a calm, grounded honesty that hadn't been there before. I wanted to say thank you, he continued, shifting from foot to foot. Not just for everything you've done, but for stepping back, for letting me figure things out on my own. I paused, letting the knife rest against the cutting board. It wasn't easy, I said quietly, and I won't pretend it didn't hurt. But you needed to learn for yourself. Sometimes love isn't about saving someone. It's about letting them stand. He nodded, swallowing hard. I get it now. I see it. Everything I took for granted. And I'm sorry for how I treated you, for letting him take credit. You were always the one who had my back. We sat down at the table, sharing a simple meal. No grand gestures, no apologies stretched into speeches, just the quiet comfort of presence. I watched him eat, listening to the soft clink of his fork against the plate, the occasional pause to tell a small story about work or friends. And in that ordinary moment, I realized the beauty of what had happened. Alex had learned. He had stumbled, faced the consequences, and come out wiser. And I had learned too that the depth of love is not measured by how much you save someone, but by how gracefully you let them grow. Over the next few months, we rebuilt our relationship, not through rescuing, but through shared experiences and quiet understanding. We cooked together, went to baseball games again, and sometimes just sat in silence, listening to the world. And each time, I felt a little more healed, a little more at peace. One afternoon, Alex said something that stayed with me. "Dad, I think I understand now. You let me fall so I could learn to fly." I smiled, a lump in my throat. Maybe, or maybe I just stopped carrying you so you could carry yourself. Either way, you're learning, and that's what matters. There were still moments of tension, moments when the old ache of rejection crept back, like a shadow at the edge of a sunny room. But they became smaller, softer, until they were just reminders of what we had survived, and in their place grew something stronger, respect, mutual understanding, and a love deeper than the need to control or protect. Looking back, I see the lesson clearly now. Sometimes the hardest act of love is not to intervene, not to rescue, but to step aside and trust. Trust that the person you care for will face their own challenges, stumble, and ultimately rise. And trust that they will remember the hands that were always there, even when unseen. I think of other parents, other children caught in the same cycle, saving, rescuing, stepping in before mistakes can happen. Sometimes letting go is the greatest gift we can give, and sometimes we must accept that their choice may not be the one we would have made, but it is theirs to make. Alex and I still talk, still share small victories and setbacks. But now there's a balance, there's recognition, there's peace. And when I see him succeed, knowing he did it with his own 2 hands, it feels like the greatest reward I could have ever imagined. So I ask you, quietly, gently, have you ever had to let someone fall in order to teach them to rise? Would you have done what I did? Love, as I've learned, is not always about being the hero. Sometimes it's about letting go, stepping back, and trusting that the heart you raised will find its way. And if you've been inspired or found a piece of yourself in this story, consider subscribing. Sometimes the lessons we share help someone else see the path they need to take.